Well, good afternoon, investors. Welcome to the August 20th edition of Bull Sessions. My name is Mark Robertson. I'm joined here by Ken Kavula. Ken, how is the weather up there? We're a little bit blustery here today.
We're this is my kind of weather, Mark. August and it's 69 degrees, so I love it. Okay.
So
Everything is still green. It's beautiful green like in late May and June, and it's cool, and it's just the sun is shining, and it's one of the 9 best days in the year that we have. So I'll take it.
well, speaking of everything being green, I will issue a disclaimer that the selection of that foliage on the left was not intentional.
It's everywhere.
So take that. Yeah, that's true. You drive through Michigan, you can't avoid billboards and dispensaries, no matter what you do. We're also joined here today by Indiana's own Kim Butcher. Good afternoon, Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. And it woke up at 69 degrees here today in southern Indiana, and that's kind of a little chilly for us in late August. It's usually like, 95 here.
Yeah, it's October weather without the change of color. And last but not least, Matt Spielman, our gentleman investor from, well, let's just call him a raconteur, Ken. He deserves it by now.
Okay, raconteur.
That's about what I'm for.
You can't get promoted any higher than that around here, Matt. So
I will tell everybody that I complimented Mark on the red bunnies. I wanted to know where he found them, and he told me it was AI generated. I really, really like the graphics. So I'm gonna have to fool around with it when I get a few spare moments here and play with some of the different graphics you can generate.
I didn't even realize I had an image generator with Chat GPT. So whatever.
Mark, are you on the free version or are you on a paid version?
I'm on the free version, so you get a couple a day, but the paid version you can do more. And of course, Sean Mace, he's a world-class expert at these things, so he's urging us to continue in that direction. All right, we're going to cover just a couple of things here today. First of all, we have an absolute runaway groundhog. I'm not sure he can be reeled in, but we'll cover that here in a minute. And of course, we are going to launch our Best Small Companies Quest. So we'll take care of that here today, starting it. And I think it's a good time to start it. And much like last year, I think I have high hopes for the companies that are involved in that. And then we'll also catch up on our utility bill auto pay portfolio. Anything else here, Ken? At least one of the rabbits will be back later.
Yeah, let's just move on to that disclaimer real quick, or this thing here, activist investor. What the heck is going on here, Mark?
Well, I don't remember the name of the hedge fund, but there is a hedge fund has assumed a 9.9% stake in the company, and they are being constructively critical about their buildings are too big and various other operational things, and that's probably an explanation for the price activity on the lower right-hand side of the page. They're not back to where I've got lots that I bought at 16, 13, and 12. So you guys can do the math, and no matter how hard you average those three numbers, the average is greater than 1195. So that tells you.
Mark, our audience comes through for us again. Aramita out in the audience tells us it's George Soros.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I thought the name of it was Engage Capital. I didn't know that was George Soros.
I think they're affiliated in some way. So anyhow, this is our weekly reminder that Portillo's is not a sponsor of this session, but they should be. All right, moving on to our standard boilerplate. No investment recommendation is intended. Do not buy Portillo stock because you heard that Mark had some shares. That would be dumb. Kevin Galogli can back me up on that.
I can second that, okay?
This is an educational demonstration. What we are talking about here is the modern investment club movement and how they have historically, over 8 decades, looked at investment opportunities, analyzed those opportunities, and built and maintained portfolios using a set of guidelines that we have found to be quite supportive in our investing efforts. So everything that we do here is for illustration and demonstration. We're big on those two things. We will be expressing some opinions, but please do your own homework before making any decision. If we own something, we will try to remember to disclose it. And again, make your own decisions about the things that work for you. We do have a roundtable coming up in 7 days. Next Tuesday evening, we will have our monthly webcast roundtable. We are beginning our 15th year. And I was just admiring that our internal rate of return over that 14-year period stands back at 17% this morning. So what a rapid recovery. I mean, I go away for a week on vacation, and you guys did a really nice job restoring a lot of stuff. Our two email addresses.
You told me before that I went on vacation one time, and I think it was that cruise, and you said, Kim, you need to go more often. I'm going to tell you the same.
Perfectly willing. We're already looking at the next one. If you have questions or suggestions for future topics, or you would like copies of these slides, and you are not a Manifest Investing subscriber, because if you are a Manifest subscriber, you have access to the slides and direct access to the YouTube stuff in the Manifest forum. Our two email addresses are there at the bottom of the page for any communications that you need. All right, let's go ahead and see what's next. Oh, the groundhog. This is amazing. Jim Gallagher is up $1 million today. Or yesterday, but within the last 2 days, up $1 million. I mean, he was at $2,003,000 or something, and I think maybe we just give him an honorary trophy and tell him to go away. Wow.
I'll tell you, Mark, I was really kind of excited to come to this roundtable or to this bull session today because I thought my portfolio went up over 9% in 1 week, and I thought maybe I'll break the top 5, you know, and I actually fell two places, going up 9%, and I fell from 8th to 10th. So I see we have 4 clubs now in the top 10. One of them, our friends from Traverse City, and another one, a 3-time winner from St. Louis. They got quite a ways to make up to beat Mr. Gallagher this year, however. So,
well, I mean, the group category would be led by the Investment Club of America out of Los Angeles, and that is still quite a race amongst all of those on the page. So the group category, the celebrity category, the monkey's ahead. The monkey has never won the celebrity category. So,
well, Ken, I want to tell you, last time I was, let's see here. Last time I was 48th, and I went up 100%. Went up another 20. I went up 20 points. So if I go up another 20, you better watch out. I'll be right at you.
I had not seen that bold move by Kim. Cool. Up to 21st in the standings, guys.
I'm a member of the B.I. Baker Model Club here, and they went from 62nd to 32nd in 1 week. So I'm going to give a big shout out to the Baker group, and let's keep on chugging up towards the top of that list there if we can.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking if Jim Gallagher actually owns shares of ASTS, we may never hear from him again.
Right, we might not see him at a bull session for a long time. Okay.
He's shopping for islands in the Caribbean at this point. Yeah. All right, so you can see that we have basically been restored to an average return of 10% for an average groundhog. Gallagher will bump that up another couple of points as soon as it hits the numbers. A third of the people are beating the market measured by the Wilshire 5000, and you can see that the value line arithmetic average is doing better, but it's still not keeping up with what is essentially the Magnificent Seven. So, and
I know the question in everybody's mind is what's giving the push to Jim's portfolio, and I will just mention 3 letters, folks. AST. We'll just mention that. It's easy to remember because it's also my wife's sorority when she was in college, Alpha Sigma Tau. But it's AST is the company that's propelling him to that $3 million plus mark from his original 1 million.
And this is what any really aggressive groundhog wants to be looking for, this type of company, because he bought this somewhere in the $2 to $3 range, and it's now up, it's tickling again up against 40. So wow. And he's only got 5, so that means he's got 200,000 invested, going up that much.
But
So
what's so amazing, Mark, is that we could have watched him move to the top of the contest in June and still got in on this company and still made huge amounts of money. I mean, look at the price back in June. It was around, well, maybe $8 in June. So, you know, a 5-bagger from June till now, that's not so bad.
yeah, I need to know more about this ASTS story, because I hear Matt mention that their first launch is coming like next week. I wonder if that thing is way ahead of schedule and a lot of optimism built in or whatever. I do not know the whole story, but wow.
Well, at least we don't have to worry about all those capital gains, Mark, you know?
That's right. Well, if Jim has trouble with those, he should send them to us. All right.
I'll take capital gains and pay taxes any day, because that
Yeah.
means I'm making money.
Absolutely. All right, here's our look at the market. We look at the market a little bit differently than others who use the S&P or the Wilshire or some other index to measure the market. We measure the market by the conduct and performance of the value line arithmetic average. The reason that we do that is because we believe in all of the above investing as defined by investing in large, medium, and smaller, faster growing companies. And the value line arithmetic average, if you look at it, you will find that that type of a blend is there. So you are looking at, plus it's equal weighted. So you do not have the same type of dominance from the Magnificent Seven. Now, there are times when that's a good thing. There are times when it's a bad thing. It's hard to keep up with the S&P 500 or the Wilshire 5000 when the performance of those top 7 stocks is so strong. And that's actually subdued, which is here with the green bars. My par is the manifest investing average return on all of the stocks in our universe. You can see that that's checking in at approximately 9%. The value line median appreciation projection for their 1,700 stocks is currently at 10.7, but that was probably on the depth of the trough when that number was calculated. I think you'll see that yellow or orange notch go down a little bit with the next one. And Ken, we are back at the line of reasonable expectations.
That I noticed. We're also getting a note from our friend Len in the audience. Yeah, the company is AST, folks, AST Services, I think, but this ticker symbol is ASTS. So if you're trying to come up with it on one of your machines, the ticker is ASTS for that company that is riding Jim to the top. Mark has it on the chart there. Yeah.
Yeah, AST Space Mobile, that may be an old title, but that's what it was, at least according to big charts, not big charts, stock charts, fairly recently. All right, so that 50%, I predict that this 50% will be less thanks to this run up with the next week update. Okay.
And we need to remind ourselves that 9 to 11 is in the historic average range. I know that there's a lot of people talking about how overpriced everything is, but the forward appreciation seems to be just about average right now. Maybe moving towards the lower side now at the moment, but still, it's 9 to 11% on all the numbers that we're taking a look at.
So here's a closer look at that value line arithmetic index, that same one that's the green bars on the previous page, but this shows you some of the daily and monthly stuff. This was the noise, the fairly recent noise when everybody was, well, as CNB would say, markets in turmoil here. Markets in turmoil. And here's the wonderful work that you guys did while I was on vacation, basically restoring that. And the one on the right is a monthly chart going back 10 years. So you get a better feel for the longer term nature. There's obviously a blue trend line there, trailing average. That's a 5-year trailing average. And, you know, just eyeballing that, I think you can make a case that this is not tremendously overvalued. When you kind of look at the distance between that line and the blue line, we had a little bit of a bump here, but that's not just visually tremendously overvalued.
Mark, I kept a quote from Kelly Evans from this morning, okay, because I think that she's listening to you. And her quote when she was talking to an analyst was, "I didn't even have time to cook a hot dog before the rally was over." Okay.
No kidding.
And that's one of your favorite stories from back in 2008, 2009, when you went to cook a hot dog and came back and the rally was finished, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I sat across from Kelly at one of the Ritholtz conferences. Had a great day. Her and a bunch of other honchos from CNBC. You would have loved it, Ken. All right, here's a look at the performance perspectives for, again, the 10 companies that are mentioned there. I'll show you the some of the top companies that are held by Manifest subscribers here in a minute, but the top 10 are all on display there. And you can see that the roundtable, like I said, the roundtable has snuck back up to a 17%. That's from yesterday to this morning at 17. So looking pretty good. And again, you can see the behavior, the performance of the indices. I did switch the Dow Jones Industrials back to the same time frame to make it less annoying to people, because I got cards and letters about it being a different time frame. But what I really would like everybody to notice is these numbers are pretty steady over the long term. You know, pick your time frame. Those are all 10 to 12. And when you go back into the historical files for the positions in the tin cup or the investing roundtable tracking portfolio, you start seeing those type of numbers. The farther back you go, they eventually get there. Any comments, Ken?
Only that the small cap growth benchmark points out why we would like to add small companies to our portfolios.
Exactly. Yeah, it benefited a little bit last week, but not it. You know, it went up, but didn't keep up with what was going on with the Wilshire.
Yep.
Here's again the answer to a question I believe you've asked it, Ken. You can actually take a look at the top 100 companies by number of dashboard appearances at Manifest. If you just type in that URL down at the bottom, I'm pretty sure that's a public file. If it's not, send me a note, and we'll make it that way. But you can see the top 20 here. It's actually the top 19 because Alphabet is listed twice. And at some point, I think, in the not too distant future, I think Alphabet is probably a threat to overtake Apple. I think many investors believe that Apple is a little vulnerable, and that'll probably will constrain it a little bit. And that's just personal opinion. I think Google is a threat to move out of that number 2 position. But they have their own challenges too.
I've been getting a lot of questions, Mark, on what's my opinion if Alphabet should be broken up, and you know, it doesn't really bother me if the government chooses to break it up. I lived through a huge breakup a couple different times, and it's been profitable every time living through it. I lived through the Bell breakup and came out of it with more value to the parts than they had all pushed together. And I happen to think that might be true of Google with all of its working parts as well. I listened to a couple of different analysts, for example, talk about the value just of Waymo. It represents about 10% of Alphabet, but they feel that it could represent a much larger portion if it were a standalone company.
Yeah, I mean, we actually all, or many of us, lived through the General Electric example of, you know, I don't know how many times over my career in investing, I've heard the argument from management that in our case, 1 + 1 + 1 should be equaling 5. You know, the 3 pieces of the company should be adding up to 5, and they're only adding up to 3. And General Electric's spin off into 3 different operating units actually proved that out to be true in very bold fashion last year. So you can't.
Absolutely, it wasn't government inspired, but it amounts to the same thing as breaking the company into pieces. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I've seen other times when 1 + 1 + 1 ultimately became 1.5 because it didn't add up so well. So,
well, I've been very successful, Mark, with two companies that came from one, and that's Abbott and AbbVie. And I've kept them both together, and they're worth they're really great holdings over the long term. And by long term, I'm talking 20+ years in those two stocks. So they don't approach some of the things like the ones we had on the previous slide, but there's certainly robust holdings that I don't mind having in my portfolio on a really long-term basis.
yeah, and Kim often points out that the spinoffs can be quite lucrative, and she's a fan of spinoffs, and she'll actually pursue the pieces of a spinoff sometimes.
Well, the thing I have learned is where is management going? Is the bulk of the management going to one particular stock or not? And follow the debt, because sometimes the parent likes to spin off and dump all the debt on the child of the spinoff.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it much worse. But there are one of my most profitable spinoffs was the parent gave the child that was spun off like $500 million. And they didn't, dump all the debt on them either. They gave them cash to help them keep growing. Because also it was when you file the filings, the insiders were going to keep like 40% of the spinoff.
Parent of the year.
Yeah, that one book that you have on your reading list of You Can Be a Stock Market Genius is your blueprint to understand spinoffs.
Yep, Greenblatt handles that subject very well. Okay, moving on. Let's spend a few minutes just catching everybody up on the electric bill auto pay demonstration portfolio. Again, the demonstration was inspired by Ken Janke and how he got his dad back into the stock market several decades ago. But the premise is basically putting together a portfolio of, in this case, 5 utility stocks where the dividend would make the monthly payments. So what you're looking at here is basically the ledger or the checkbook. And the important number is the number on the right. You can see the individual transactions, but that number on the right has to stay in the black. And you can see as of mid-August, it is hanging in there at $444. If everything goes to budget, as is, the future expected dividend payments and utility payments, that number is actually growing to quite a healthy number by the end of the year. So that is the objective, is caught up right here in maintaining this number above zero so that these monthly payments can be made. And it's actually going along quite well. Here's a look at the engine behind it. You can see the dashboard up at the top of the 4 utilities and that hybrid investment, GLPI, that we basically did so we would learn together about GLPI. It's a subject all by itself. It's just an enhanced hybrid fund that uses options to enhance dividends. So you can take a look at that. But the 4 utilities that we have there have actually all done fairly well. Also, you can see that we have gains in NextEra Southern and Oklahoma Gas and Electric, OGE, but Essential is still lagging a little bit. And you can see that we actually have positive gains on the capital side for GLPI also. So Ken, my thought here is, what if we could, that on the preceding page, we have this budgeted liability, the taxes on dividends that is coming in. Again, that's estimated. So we're preparing for that. We want to stay above this number. I'm just thinking, what if we sold off our essential utilities and basically captured this loss? We'd have basically a little bit of a offset for any capital gains. And what might we replace it with? Even though we have
sorry, finish up.
There's nothing wrong with the company. This is purely a tax gymnastics type thing.
Well, and I know that we started the simulation with utility companies because we wanted to show that you could use utilities to pay your utility bill. But I don't see anything wrong with beginning to show that you can use any dividend stock to pay almost any bill that you might want to set up in a simulation just like this one. It doesn't have to be a utility set of stocks. It doesn't have to be utility bills that you're paying. Maybe you wanna pay a car payment on a regular basis, or maybe, you know, there's all kinds of different simulations can be set up, and I wouldn't be adverse, Mark, to making the sale of the remaining essential utilities and then using that cash and searching for a high yield non-utility company to put into the mix right now, and then we have the flexibility, if we end up with any other losses moving into the future, to do the same with those companies as well.
Absolutely. And you know, we should also point out that when Ken did the demonstration with his dad, electric utility stocks were like as steady as the wind. I mean, maybe that's not a good example. Really steady. I mean, they paid the highest dividends, and you could really trust that stock price wasn't going to move around an enormous amount. So you had a very steady investment with a high interest rate or dividend yield. And so we basically are asking the question, well, what if we open the door to other higher yield vehicles with the caveat, and this is important, uh, if you reach too aggressively for projected yield, and you basically do it with a low quality company, that can really be a path to heartache. So what I did, Ken, was basically say, okay, let's go out there, let's try to find what companies out there would match the essential utilities projected annual return. We want high quality companies, and then again, we want to improve on. We want to beat that projected yield from essential utilities, and basically ran that screen. And there's some interesting names on here. And there's a flavor that would meet many different needs in this type of an application.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of companies that I would disregard, Mark, in the whole thing. I would, as much as I might like to look at a chemical and mining company from Chile, and as much as I might like to look at a bank from Canada, I would want to avoid any problems with foreign tax. And I know that foreign tax gets involved where you have to pay taxes to foreign governments. So I would stay away from any non-US companies for this particular simulation. I really also, I just kind of get a gut-wrenching feeling when I look at a company that has a yield of 10%. I just am asking myself, can that yield be sustained? And I'm saying to myself, boy, that one just seems like it might be a little bit of a reach. I'm much more comfortable with those companies that are yielding in the fours or the high threes. And there's a swath of them there, from Lazard down through maybe Games Workshop, or maybe even Wisconsin Energy, although we're back to utilities at that point with Wisconsin Energy. So those are the ones that I'm most comfortable with. If you want to take a little bit of a leap, I think maybe we should look at Gaming and Leisure. It's a REIT. It is paying a dividend of 6.5%, has a fairly decent par attached to it. I know that some people's instincts are to go for Dorchester, and I just get queasy when I look at that yields that high. I don't know, Mark.
Well, maybe we can take the pain away. I mean, there's certainly a lot of opportunities here. This American Electric Power is compelling. So is IDACORP, Coca-Cola, and Novartis. I mean, you talk about a quality situation. And Paychex down at the bottom. So you could do a lot with these. You could tack on a little bit to the dividend that we had with the essential utilities. Again, we're looking to boost this in order to boost this slightly. Again, we're not going to get too carried away. But here's what. Go ahead.
As we talk, Mark, I'm going to answer a few questions from the audience also. Marcia wants to know, does the model take into account price increases in the utility bill over time? And the answer is absolutely. The projected prices are reevaluated every year and compared to what an average utility bill will be in a geographic area that Mark and I are familiar with. So these prices, that $121.73, which is the monthly payment for the utility, has not stayed constant from the beginning of the simulation. It just hasn't.
It's higher than when we started, but it actually went down just a tiny bit for this year.
Yep.
Believe it or not.
Yep. And that, Marcia, is exactly what's happening in our part of the country right now, that our utility bills have basically stabilized, and if anything, they've moved down just a touch in the last 12 months. So there we are.
We'll see.
Mark and Ken, I have a question for you. My dad used to have DTE, Detroit Energy, I believe it was called.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it in. I don't see it in the dash. I signed on online on my phone to see if I could see it, and I don't see it in the list of companies. But that's why he had DTE, because that's how he paid the utility bill.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure the symbol is DTE, but Len would be out there ready to check me on that. All right, so here's the look at the one that gives Ken the heebie-jeebies, and I agree. I understand why he has the heebie-jeebies. The reason is right here. The blue line's a wavy blue line. So what he's basically saying, I'm paraphrasing, Ken, correct me if I paraphrase you wrong, is he's concerned that the dividend might not be as reliable.
Sustainable. I want a dividend that can be sustained at a certain rate. I'm not necessarily looking for dividend growth, although that would be nice to keep up with price appreciation in the stock, but I'd at least like the dividend itself to be sustainable, and I'm not certain that when it's at 10 that a company can do that all the time. That's a really healthy dividend, 10%.
Oh, it's more than healthy. It's aggressive. There's no doubt about it. It makes up 2/3 of or a pretty good chunk of the total appreciation expected from this company. And this really does kind of answer the question of, what would we expect? We would expect volatility. It's not a company like Coca-Cola or Paychex where those numbers are all nice and orderly and gently increasing. Those numbers are kind of all over the map, something that we've kind of learned to live with a little bit with JEPI in the portfolio, but, not ideal. To each his own comes to mind, but this is it's in a fascinating area. This is Len Douglas's playground. These companies are extremely profitable, and you can see the operating margin has actually been pretty consistent over the years. And I believe that no matter what party prevails in our current political environment, this is a company that probably does okay, even if we do get some fluctuations in the prices paid for their product. So I think that it's an interesting situation. We could tinker with that. Here's the alternative that Ken had mentioned, this gaming and leisure. It is a REIT. I'm pretty sure this one's a REIT. That's correct, isn't it, Ken?
Yeah, and I'm much more comfortable with the chart down the bottom left-hand corner on this one than I was on the last one, where you see that gently increasing dividend to match the increasing price, and you know that the percentage, the yield is staying roughly the same when it does that. And I'm much more comfortable, and this is still a pretty decent dividend. This is 6% plus, isn't it? Yeah, there it is, 6.5, 6.5. So I think that's That's about 3 times what we consider a good solid dividend in today's market. I mean, we've been quoting a dividend of 2% to be pretty decent in today's market. We know that in the 50s and the 60s, a dividend of 3 or even 4% was quote pretty decent unquote, but that's just not happening nowadays very much. So 6.5 is still pretty much out there, but it's not 10, I guess.
Well, again, I think this comes down to who you are as an individual investor,
Yeah.
and if you have a longer time horizon and you are risk tolerant, the first one is good. The second one is a little bit more stable. I mean, look at the projected returns, 10% versus 20 something. So again, younger, more risk tolerance. This is a good idea. If that's not your situation, and again, we should mention at least once here that REITs, I don't know if that changed with the most recent tax season, but REITs used to drive club treasurers crazy. So if we're talking about a club situation here, you wouldn't do this one.
Well, and
until
Mark,
recently.
we're getting reminded by Diane out in the audience that we need to be very careful as investors when we start investing in limited partnerships and when we start investing in REITs. That it's not all what it seems to be sometimes, and you get involved in certain tax situations with some of this money that's being thrown off. You just can't assume that it's pure dividend, even though that's what a lot of the brokerage firms label it as. That's what a lot of the analysts label it as. Sometimes they're returning capital to their investors, and that puts you in a whole different situation with the tax man than on that return to capital. So you got to kind of watch it. And while I wouldn't be adverse to putting this one in place of the consolidated energy or whatever that one was called, I still would essential energy. I still would be very comfortable with one of those that are paying, that are maybe only yielding 4% or 4.5%, something like that, where I knew the dividend was a true dividend, that I didn't have to worry about doing any machinations with the tax man about the whole thing.
Is Diane willing to go live? Because she is an expert in this area. I mean, love to hear from personal experience. So what are we missing? Is this paragraph here troubling? Or, how should an investor read that? And
Diane, if you're willing to go live, why don't you put your hand up? And if you're not, then we won't embarrass you by asking you to.
She's a good friend of the community going back a few decades, for those that are not familiar with Diane.
And I have Diane out there. And Diane, you're unmuted. Talk to Mark. Talk to us.
It's good to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a few years back, I invested in KKR, Colbert Kravitz, who was doing a lot of limited partnerships or buying things, and they were a limited partnership. And when it came around to tax time, I mean, dealing with trying to put the limited partnership information into my tax return prompted me to immediately sell it. I mean, it was like 47 entries. TurboTax is no help, and I wasn't going to go pay somebody to help me figure out how to put these very tiny numbers into a tax return. And of course, I wasn't going to ignore it because the K-1 is filed with the IRS, and so you never know how that matching program works. Are they going to go look and see that, oh, somebody reported a K-1 to you, but you didn't file it? So my sister dealing with this right now because her broker sold her something and she did not understand that the cash that was coming back was being reported to her on a K-1. She never saw the K-1, so now she has to refile 3 years worth of taxes.
Oh my.
It isn't pretty.
So I think that it really does make the point. So anytime you see those royalties and lease bonuses and stuff, you are.
Well, and there are some things with respect to REITs as well. They're not as messy as master LPs or even master limited partnerships, but a lot of the oil and gas things are all set up as limited partnerships. And for people who know what they're doing or pay good tax accountants, it's probably not an issue. But for sure, your club treasurers, just like Ken had said, you know, they don't like REITs. Well, they're going to dislike LPs even more.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the commentary. Good to hear you. And we got to get you on here as a guest pretty soon. All right, let's go ahead and press on. I think I just chickened out. What are we going to go with, Ken? We got to make a pick here.
Well, you know, Mark, I'd be very happy with Pfizer. I mean, it's a Michigan company, you know, Michigan, a lot of employment in Michigan, and we can always use the plus. I think I'd be very happy. I don't see UPS leaving the planet anytime soon. So I don't have any problems with UPS. I own Paychecks myself, and I very much appreciate that dividend check that comes in from Paychecks on a quarterly basis. So there's three choices that I wouldn't mind putting money into immediately, you know.
All right, so we sound pretty wishy-washy. Let's go with Pfizer in honor of all the stuff that's going on. Who knows, they may come up with an obesity medication or something to treat cancer or something here pretty soon. I know that Pfizer is a core holding with Hugh McManus, our pharmaceutical scientist. So I see a 4% yield, PE under 10, a decent growth rate for an enormous company in the business. And I don't think they have more lawsuits than usual right now. So let's go with Pfizer, 4% yield. We'll throw it in there and see what happens. All right. So
Mark, Anat is out there. He says, and I just erased it. So hold on, give me come back to me, okay?
Control Z, Ken. Control Z.
Yes. No, go on with what you're doing, Mark, and I'll come back with it in a moment here, okay?
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our best small companies for 2025. Now is when we start warming up and start building out a wish list or a watch list. So, and there's another one of your red rabbits, Ken, lurking. And we just like to start with a reminder that small cap is not necessarily a small company. We know that we think that's an extremely important thing to recognize and exploit. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then this is from Ian Castle over at Microcap Club. You can do pretty well with some fairly small companies, and we know that. We know that as a community, and we would just like to discover a few of those. So there is room for some relatively small companies in our endeavor, and we'll keep cranking away.
I'm back now, Mark, and Anat has said, for those of us are learning about setting up a portfolio like the simulation, he's assuming that we still have to do an SSG, and I think you're absolutely right in that. We're looking at companies with very, very high quality. We're focusing on the yield more than anything else, but high quality and yield go hand in hand, and usually give a fairly stable stock price. Not always. We've had an example in our own simulation here where the stock price actually went down rather than up. But he says, how do you build the portfolio in the actual market? There's enough money invested in the whole thing to start with, the seed money that comes from buying the 4 or 5 stocks you're going to use. And it would be very easy to open up a separate brokerage account at almost any broker and buy those particular 4 or 5 stocks in that particular account, and only those, and then the dividends would go right into that account. You know, there's always the ability to transfer money out of the account to pay a bill or to use the cash for what you need. So that's a pretty practical way of setting it up and making it work. Then all you have to do is use the electronic abilities that we're all aware of today to transfer money in and out of that account. I would hope you wouldn't be transferring any in. I would hope it would be all out transfers. But that's the way you could do it practically, I think.
Yeah, and one point I do want to stipulate, I'm not saying not even for a second that Essential Utilities, WTRG is the ticker, is a bad company or a weak company or anything else. It has a quality rating of 97. So this is tax related gymnastics. That's what it's about. It's about basically softening this number, this bill that we owe a little bit, and replacing it. Again, keep in mind that we will be replacing it with a company growing at about 6%, but with a PE of 9. So this number is going to go down. Our average PE is going to actually be decreased. We'll lose a little bit over here, but not bad. And it's just
And
it's a good
some
swap
of
out.
you are asking why not this one or why not that one. I think it was pretty much a random guess among these very high quality companies to answer all of you at once. A couple of you have said why not Blackstone, and
All right, yeah, I saw
I
that.
think it's just because I wasn't familiar with Blackstone. Doesn't happen to be a company I have a lot of contact with or I follow very closely. Pfizer is a company that I follow a little bit more closely, so I mentioned Pfizer. But I certainly think Blackstone would fit the bill almost as well, although it does carry a PE, 6 points higher than Pfizer's PE does there, but also has more growth. Also has more growth. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing wrong with Blackstone.
Yep.
In this situation. All right, so let's go ahead and press on. Here's a quick look at our portfolio for this year, and I wanted to just kind of spend a moment scratching our heads, kind of size of companies that we're looking at. We used this as a worksheet last year, trying to identify companies. We had added, because of all of the recession talk, this notion of comparing the next year to this year when it comes to sales. I think we'll continue to do that. I think that served us fairly well. The numbers down here, including this one, which has had the wheels come off a little bit, it's just a protective measure, and I think it has served us well, Ken. But we want high quality companies. I think this one probably goes up on the next update, but that one has been extremely good to us. Shockwave was sold to Johnson & Johnson on April 5th at a real nice gain for us. But we basically went after companies with decent return forecasts and a little bit more ambitious growth forecasts.
And Matt, there's almost our 55% again. If you look at this list here and look at the relative return, this is 60-40, green to red. So
yeah, there's that neutral small advantage.
There's that number again. You know?
Yeah. Compound that year over year and it becomes something big.
Yep.
Yeah, this one is actually 60-40. Here is the results, total return. That is not annualized. That's actual total return over the last 7 months or so. And that is at an 18% advantage to the market right now. We don't need to talk about that anymore. Ken thinks it'll jinx us. All right, so
I know it will. So keep going. All right.
All right, so we're gonna start off where we ended last year's hunt with the Vanguard Russell 2000 Growth ETF, and this actually takes the Russell 2000 and breaks it into pieces. We're going to be talking about 1,000 companies that have more growth than value characteristics, and one of the reasons we think it's attractive, going back to that chart earlier that showed the long-term stock market, that is the Wilshire 5000 in the blue area underneath here, this down here. This has historically outperformed the Wilshire 5000, and you can see that for the last couple of years it has not. So is it pent up? Is it a coiled spring? Time will tell, but we think it's a good time to be shopping amongst these type of companies. Here's a look at the top 25 holdings in the Vanguard 2000 Growth ETF. Again, that is the ticker symbol. You can buy them all at once, VTWG, but these are the top 25 to give you some idea of the type of companies that we're looking at. The top one there, I can't even tell you what company it is, INSM, and the fourth one down, that's one of the vaccine companies. Neither one of them have earnings. So in order to keep Ken from losing consciousness, we're just leaving them out. Everybody else here has earnings. We think it's a good idea. Now that INSM is up like 2 2,000% since October, but it doesn't have earnings yet. So there are some interesting names here. There are some newer ticker symbols on here, but these are all covered. So that is the top 25, just to give you a feel. Go ahead, Ken.
I always feel good, Mark, when I own one of them, okay, on a list like this. And I own IBP. I'm down there 4 or 5 from the bottom. That was a stock that I think Kim brought to us maybe 10 months ago or a year ago. And I put some money into it, and I've been very happy with that particular investment. But that's the only one on the list that I own. How about you?
I have a tiny bit of Lantheus, this one right here. And I don't think any of the other ones qualify, at least not for right now. I have often owned Fluor over the years, but this is actually a pretty decent example of we're not necessarily talking about higher growth companies within a small cap fund. Fluor is a large engineering and construction firm. It's old. Its growth rate is only 4%. So that one probably does not attract a whole lot of interest from either of the two of us as we go through this effort. But it's a perfect example of the type of companies that can be in this type of fund. If you look at the Russell 2000 without splitting out the growth, it's even worse. You got all kinds of distressed merchandise in the listing. You stay away from some of that distressed merchandise by going with the 2000 growth ETF.
It's interesting. Last night at our investment club meeting, the Mid-Michigan Model Club, I asked the members to send me some great ideas that might help me jumpstart an industry study, and 2 of them this morning sent me Halo as a particular idea. It's a biotech, a really great story behind the biotech. I'm not so certain I like what's happening with the financials, but it's a great story behind that biotech. You might want to, if you're looking for a good story to tell your investment club, that's a good one.
So one of the things that we will do, in fact, here's one that we're looking for this type of company. And if Jim Gallagher will give us his next company that's going to launch into orbit, we'll take it. But this is a company that showed up on the lists last year. We didn't pay much attention to it, and it's up, I don't know, 1,400% since Halloween, something like that. And I'd never heard of the company. And
sounds like Snoop Dogg should be on the board. I don't know.
He could be. So it's shot up quite a bit. But what I would draw the audience's attention to, this is the type of company that can be kind of sneaky, very early stage. You're looking at 150 million in sales this year, 221. 277, so they're kind of at the right point. Look at those earnings. They're taking off. So this is definitely a launch pad type company. I'd never heard of them, but hey, it sounds like they've got a pretty good thing going. Could be worth digging in and understanding more about it. So we're looking for these types. We certainly don't want a whole bunch of these in the portfolio, but this is an example of a type of company that could capture our interest when the time comes.
Buy now, pay later, right? That's what that model is there.
Well, you know, we aren't going to make the casinos go away. We're not going to make this behavior go away either anytime soon. So this will continue, and those who serve it well will do okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so here is a list ranked by their manifest rank in descending order. And this is just a starting point, everybody. We're making sure that the companies have I know, Ken, should we stop at 3 billion in sales? Try to stay under 3 billion?
I think that's getting a little bit rarefied, but okay, we can go 3 billion. Why don't we go 2.5, Mark? Let's go 2.5. Okay.
So this one probably goes away. We covered this one with the Sedona gang. This is that metallurgical coal company, and it's an interesting study. I mean, check out the earning number there. So what we are highlighting here again is the sales. I limited it to 50 million on the downside, and that also is fairly aggressive. But anything from 50 to, call it 3 million, 2.5 billion. I'm sorry, 2.5 billion is a max. And then we're basically looking for companies that have earnings. These all do. And we'll do a little bit more with this category. I'd like to refine this a little bit. But again, looking at across the board, some really decent growth rates here. There's a couple that would fall out. Whatever Magnolia is, that's probably not enough. So again, we'll be slicing some of those out of there and sticking to the companies with double digits, hopefully above 12 for growth forecast. And
yeah, we've tried to stay above 12, and we've sometimes gone down to 11 or even 10 double digits. We've at least had the discipline to stay within double digits, but there are a couple, you're right, that are a little slow. That kind of drops InMode from consideration, and right now I think probably rightfully so, although I think there's a lot of room for InMode to recover if something should happen in the Middle East that begins to solve some of the problems that are going on there. If there should be a ceasefire or any kind of a move towards a peace treaty at some point, I think that will certainly benefit a company like InMode and a couple of the other Israeli companies as well.
Yeah, headquartered in Tel Aviv, and I think that this is a fairly rare example. Maybe we'll do a segment on this, Ken. Fairly rare example of the pessimism breaking through, and really all the optimism is gone out of that stock. So
absolutely,
probably the right time to be interested in it. Anyhow, so again, a good shopping list to start with. You can see some of our recent favorites on here. Ken has done a number of presentations on EXLS. They're just
I own EXLS, and I'm in a club that owns IPAR, so I own 2 on the list right now. That's pretty decent.
And I think this ACM has come up a number of times. We have dragged this one across the gauntlet a couple of times in the past. Matt's Green Brick Partners, I believe he goes to their Christmas parties now, is on here. I wouldn't be surprised to see that make the list.
And Mark, Axos comes up on these lists all the time, and we've turned our nose up at Axos so many different times. I guess we should look back historically and see if it's been a good stock to avoid or if it's been a terrible stock to avoid. We should kind of take a look at that.
Agreed. I mean, this goes all the way back probably 10 years ago to the Groundhog champion out of Midland. His name is escaping me, but he was back when it was Bank of the Internet. He was really high on the company. All right, so that's where we will get started. We will be publishing more excerpts and some research on the Russell 2000. I think I've got it whittled down to about 600 companies when we throw out the companies that do not yet have earnings. And when we also throw out the companies with less than double-digit growth rates, we'll whittle that list down and see what we can find going forward. But for right now, I think Green Brick and a couple of the others, EXLS, are probably pretty strong candidates to make the final list. We'll see what the next few months hold.
Surprised to see oil dry on the list, Mark. That's an old timer. It's been around for a long time.
What do they have for a growth rate? They're at 10%. So
yeah, I'm surprised it's still small. It's been around for such a long time. Yeah.
All right, so let's just close with a quick commentary on the Buttonwood portfolio. This is a real money portfolio that we have instigated here over the last several months. And we will be putting Thermo Fisher, was that the one we had decided, with the lower growth rate and the lower projected return?
Yeah, I think that's always, let's put it on the hot seat, yeah.
Challenge it.
Very definitely challenge it, uh-huh.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see us accumulate some Lululemon under the current conditions. So we will tackle that within the next few weeks. I also wanted to point out that a couple of months ago, Ken Williams did a presentation where he talked about this investor, Joseph Carlson. And on the Manifest Forum, you can actually, in our weekly, I'll show it here when we go live. Joseph Carlson just did a really nice presentation on what the super investors are buying right now. And I suspect that we will do a feature or a segment where we talk about that. And he pointed out some fairly accomplished investors that were selling their Thermo Fisher right now. So I think you'll find that interesting, Ken. Interesting way to look at portfolios. a lot of what we do here, and you'll see us do it with the actively managed smaller company funds, where we'll go looking for ideas. Maybe I'll talk Diane into helping us out with Oberweis this year, an analysis of some of the Oberweis activities. So put that on your radar for coming up. And then I wanted to point out, I think you probably are, everybody here already knows this because you weren't on vacation. Warren Buffett is buying Ulta Beauty, at least a piece of it. And I just want to congratulate the scores of you that are out there that beat Warren to the punch. Now get out there and find the next one and tell the rest of us.
I'll tell you another company that Buffett invested in but didn't get the bounce that Ulta got, and that was Heiko. I happen to own Heiko. I've owned it for quite a few years, and I was really happy when I heard he was investing in it, and then I looked for the bounce, and there wasn't any. So not every single stock gets a Buffett premium attached to it. I think they have to be big enough for the people on TV to repeat them 53 times before it becomes something that happens.
That and Heiko's probably had a pretty good run up with some of the defense spending here recently.
Yep.
All right.
Len Douglas says that oil dry is getting into kitty litter. Okay.
Oh, we can work with that. That's all I'm going to say. All right. We do archive all of these presentations on YouTube, including the roundtables and the bull sessions. You can simply go to YouTube, search for Manifest Investing, bull sessions, or roundtable. You'll find this page and you can go back and check into the archives. There are many years of things there, and we'll close with, that was my view. Believe it or not, that picture on the left is a picture from our deck after midnight. Now it's a little bit enhanced by the phone, but that is the moon. That's not the sun. And,
is that the blue moon, Mark? Were you there on the night of the blue moon?
It's one of the supermoon family for sure.
Okay, because we had a blue moon on Monday night. Yeah.
We missed it, but we were close. And then the picture on the right, who can name the location there? That's I think that's one of the
Mackinac Island, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, great.
Do you know what building it is?
It's the Grand Hotel, right?
The Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island.
Yeah.
That is, I think that goes into my top 10 saved pictures of all time. I think that's quite a picture.
And is that the Northern Lights above the hotel?
It most certainly is.
Great. What a picture. Very, very nicely done.
Good stuff.
Now, did you buy it or take it, Mark?
that one is borrowed.
Borrowed. Okay.
from Facebook. I wish I could say I took it. The one on the left belongs to me.
Great.
All right, and I wanted just to give a quick look at this one because I thought it was a really good presentation. Let me pull up. If you go to the Manifest website and expected returns, just click on that. If you come down here to the useful links, super investors are buying these stocks. This is a pretty decent demonstration of looking at what a person you respect that has earned a respect is doing in terms of buying stocks. And that's Joseph right there. Not going to play it, but
requires anyone managing above $100 million to reveal their portfolio.
Okay, I'll just leave it at that. So again, going back,
what these investors,
you can access it by going to our weekly update and then look at the super investors are buying these stocks. There's also an article here which we will delve into on the microcaps, the super investors of microcap. This is Ian Casal at the Microcap Club. So you can look forward to those as future subjects. With that,
sounds
Ken?
interesting. Sounds interesting. So I'll talk to you about this evening in a half an hour or so, Mark. Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Let me know what you need from me. All right. Get out there and get hunting, everybody, and certainly give us your best small company ideas so that we can continue to prosper collectively. Thanks, everybody.
Good afternoon, folks.